It's 150 million years ago. The sun beats down on a vast, humid floodplain that will one day become the heart of North America. Towering conifers sway against a backdrop of volcanic ridges. Ferns blanket the forest floor. Dragonflies the size of falcons buzz through the thick air. Everything is alive, and everything is in danger. This is the late Jurassic. Not just the age of dinosaurs, but the age of predators. And these weren't dumb brutes following instinct. These were brilliant tacticians in a biological war, strategic, specialized, and endlessly adaptive. Grazing nearby, a herd of young sauropods munches on cycads, nervously flicking their tails. They don't need to see their enemies to feel them. Every broken twig might signal an ambush. Every rustle could mean a charging death. Because in the shadows lurk Allosaurus, Torvosaurus, Ceratosaurus, and others. Theropod giants forged by millions of years of evolution into different styles of killing. These weren't interchangeable monsters. Each had its own body plan, hunting methods, and preferred habitats. Some fought head-on. Others struck from cover. Some killed alone. Others, perhaps, hunted together. Welcome to a different kind of dinosaur documentary. This isn't about size or raw volume. It's about strategy. How these predators survived not just prey, but each other. In a world without safety nets, success meant more than strength. It meant brains, timing, and adaptation. In this video, we'll break down the battle tactics of Jurassic apex predators. You'll learn how Allosaurus may have used physics as a weapon. How Torvosaurus turned brute force into battlefield control. How Ceratosaurus sliced, vanished, and thrived in the margins. We'll examine fossil battlefields, predator traps, climate-driven strategies, and the evolutionary arms race between hunter and hunted. So sharpen your claws, steady your tail, and step into the combat zone. The Jurassic isn't just history. It's a survival manual written in bone. A lie of the ambush. The strategic might of Allosaurus. In the vast predator hierarchy of the late Jurassic, Allosaurus fragilis stood as the undisputed tactician. It wasn't the largest predator of its time, but it may have been the most dangerously efficient. Reaching lengths of up to 30 feet and weighing over 2 tons, this carnivore was agile, smart, and specialized for calculated violence. Its body was built for mobility and control. Unlike the heavier Torvosaurus, Allosaurus had a lighter frame, long hind limbs, and a stiff, balancing tail that helped it move quickly and maneuver through dense vegetation. It wasn't built for sprinting across open plains, but for short bursts of speed, ideal for ambushing prey from concealment near forest edges or riverbanks. But the real mystery and brilliance of Allosaurus lies in its skull. It could open its jaws more than 80 degrees, far wider than most modern predators. This anatomical feature led to one of the most fascinating theories in paleontology, the hatchet bite. Rather than relying solely on a crushing bite, Allosaurus may have used powerful neck muscles to swing its head downward like an axe, slashing into flesh with its serrated teeth. This would create deep wounds that bled heavily, weakening prey over time. It wasn't always about killing instantly. It was about killing efficiently. Fossil evidence backs this up. Numerous herbivore bones from the Morrison Formation, especially from stegosaurs and juvenile sauropods, show healed injuries consistent with Allosaurus bites. These weren't clean kills. They were strategic assaults, with the predator perhaps stalking wounded animals until they collapsed from blood loss or fatigue. There's also compelling evidence of social behavior, though still debated. Sites like the Cleveland, Lloyd Dinosaur Quarry contain dozens of Allosaurus fossils, including many juveniles. Some paleontologists suggest this hints at cooperative hunting, where packs may have taken down massive prey together. Others argue these gatherings were more sinister, possibly the result of cannibalism or predator traps. Whatever the truth, one thing is clear. Allosaurus wasn't just a hunter, it was a field commander. It used terrain anatomy and timing to devastating effect. In a world of giant killers, Allosaurus was the one that struck first, struck fast and often, struck smart. The brute power unleashed, the hunger of Torvosaurus. If Allosaurus was the precise tactician of the Jurassic, then Torvosaurus tenari was the wrecking ball. Measuring up to 35 feet in length and possibly exceeding 4,000 pounds, this predator didn't rely on ambush or finesse. It was a walking disaster zone built for devastation. Everything about Torvosaurus screamed raw power. Its limbs were thick and heavily muscled, especially its forearms, unusual for a theropod. Its hands were equipped with long claws that may have been used to grapple prey, holding struggling victims in place while its enormous jaws delivered the kill. And those jaws, lined with massive, banana-shaped teeth, thick and serrated, ideal for tearing muscle and breaking bone. Unlike the surgical slashes of Allosaurus, Torvosaurus likely employed a brutal bite and tear method, ripping large chunks of flesh from its victims in a single pass. It didn't need multiple attacks. It needed one, well-placed and catastrophic. This predator likely targeted large sauropods like Camarasaurus and Diplodocus, especially the weak or injured. Its sheer size gave it a predatory advantage in open areas or rougher terrain. Some theories even suggest that Torvosaurus may have preferred rocky outcrops and river valleys, where its ambushes could be more effective, especially from higher ground. Fossil remains show that Torvosaurus coexisted with Allosaurus and Ceratosaurus, but there's no strong evidence it was social. Its solitary nature might have made it even more dangerous. Every encounter with a Torvosaurus was one-on-one, and it didn't back down. Its lower fossil frequency suggests it may have filled a more specialized niche. Where Allosaurus was abundant and versatile, Torvosaurus may have been the top-level predator, intervening when a kill demanded overwhelming force. In direct confrontations with other predators, Torvosaurus likely used its superior strength and devastating bite to dominate carcasses or defend territory. It wasn't a creature that bluffed. It attacked, and won. Torvosaurus was the embodiment of brute force in the Jurassic, a predator that didn't have to outthink its prey. It only had to reach it. Ceratosaurus, the silent slasher. While among the giant killers of the Jurassic, Ceratosaurus nasicornis stood apart, not for its size, but for its style. At roughly 20 feet long and weighing around a ton, it was smaller than both Allosaurus and Torvosaurus. But what it lacked in size, it made up for in stealth, speed, and slicing power. Ceratosaurus had a distinctive, narrow skull lined with blade-like teeth, long, thin, and serrated, perfect for cutting flesh. It wasn't a bone crusher. It was a precision slasher, likely targeting soft spots like the belly, neck, or thigh muscles of its prey. A well-placed bite from Ceratosaurus could sever arteries or inflict fatal blood loss without ever needing to wrestle with a massive opponent. Its tail was especially long and muscular, giving it excellent balance and maneuverability. This adaptation, combined with a relatively light body, allowed Ceratosaurus to move quickly and turn tightly, even in forested or wet environments. Its skeletal remains are frequently found near rivers, lakes, and floodplains, suggesting it preferred dense, humid habitats, unlike the more open-range preferences of Torvosaurus. These locations may have also supported an additional skill. Some paleontologists believe Ceratosaurus may have had semi-aquatic tendencies, occasionally feeding on fish, turtles, or scavenging from drowned herbivores near water sources. Its sleek body and location data hint at a lifestyle not shared by its more robust cousins. The most iconic feature of Ceratosaurus was its nasal horn, a raised structure above the snout. Though it looks intimidating, it's unlikely to have been used as a weapon. Most experts believe it served a display function, perhaps signaling maturity, dominance, or mating status to other individuals. There's little evidence to suggest social hunting. Ceratosaurus likely operated solo, relying on its speed, agility, and sneak attacks. When titans collide, interspecific conflict, the late Jurassic wasn't just a time of predator versus prey. It was predator versus predator. Fossil evidence from sites like the Morrison Formation paints a picture of an ecosystem teeming with apex carnivores. Allosaurus, Torvosaurus, and Ceratosaurus weren't distant neighbors. They were territorial competitors, often overlapping in the same hunting grounds. So what happened when these giants crossed paths? The fossil record offers tantalizing clues. Some Allosaurus skeletons show healed bite wounds on their skulls and necks, wounds made by other large theropods. Tooth spacing and puncture depth suggest these weren't accidents. These were combat injuries, inflicted during face-offs likely triggered by food disputes or territorial clashes. Carcass sites were especially volatile. When a sauropod fell, it created a feeding frenzy. Multiple predators might converge, and if there was more competition than meat, violence was inevitable. Like modern lions and hyenas, Jurassic predators may have engaged in dominance battles, deciding who fed first and who fled. In these scenarios, size mattered, but so did speed and aggression. Torvosaurus likely had the advantage in brute strength. A single bite could cripple a rival. Allosaurus, with its agility and possible group behavior, may have used numbers and coordination to overwhelm a solitary challenger. Ceratosaurus, being the smallest, probably avoided direct conflict altogether, choosing instead to scavenge from the outskirts, waiting for the chaos to settle. There's also growing evidence of cannibalism, especially in Allosaurus. Fossils found at Cleveland, Lloyd dinosaur quarry show bite marks on Allosaurus bones, inflicted by other Allosaurus. Whether this was the result of a feeding frenzy, desperation during drought, or combat gone fatal remains unclear, but it adds a chilling layer to the picture sometimes. The deadliest enemy was a member of your own species. These interspecific conflicts weren't just brutal. They were evolutionarily significant. They determined which traits survived. Stronger jaws, heavier builds, faster reflexes, smarter strategies. In the Jurassic, every day was a test, not just against prey, but against rivals who wanted the same kill, the same territory, the same dominance. The battles weren't just imagined, they're written in the bones. Pasque huntars or loners, pack hunters or loner. The social strategies of Jurassic predator in the world of modern predators. Social structure often defines success. Wolves hunt in packs. Lions coordinate in prides. But when it comes to dinosaurs, especially Jurassic theropods, the question of social behavior remains one of the most hotly debated topics in paleontology. Were these apex predators solitary hunters, or did they work together to bring down massive prey? The key to this mystery lies in the bones, specifically at the Cleveland, Lloyd Dinosaur Quarry in Utah. This fossil site contains the remains of over 70 dinosaurs, and more than half are Allosaurus. Crucially, these include a mix of juveniles and adults, all deposited in the same area. One interpretation is that this represents a pack structure, where individuals hunted and fed together, much like modern carnivores. If true, it would give Allosaurus a distinct tactical advantage. Juveniles could harass prey from the flanks, while adults delivered the killing blows. But there's a darker theory. Some paleontologists argue the site may represent a predator trap, perhaps a mud pit or seasonal waterhole where carnivores became stuck or died while trying to scavenge. The evidence of Allosaurus bones bearing tooth marks from other Allosaurus even raises the possibility of cannibalism. In this view, it wasn't a family. It was a feeding frenzy. So which is it? Social coordination or survival-driven chaos? The answer may be a mix of both. Allosaurus may not have lived in organized packs, but could have formed temporary groups, especially among juveniles or during resource-rich events like migrations or droughts. Opportunistic cooperation rather than deep social bonds. On the other hand, Torvosaurus shows no signs of group living. Its immense size, rarity in the fossil record, and solitary anatomy suggest it was likely a lone hunter, dominating by brute force and size alone. Ceratosaurus, being more nimble and often found in wetter, more isolated environments, probably operated solo, using stealth and speed to avoid confrontation altogether. Whether loners or occasional collaborators, one truth holds: their behaviors were adapted to their environment and strategy. Cooperation, conflict, and cannibalism all played roles. In the prey strikes back, defensive evolution in the Jurassic predators were fearsome, but the prey they hunted were far from helpless. Evolution equipped many herbivores with impressive defense mechanisms, creating an arms race where survival didn't depend on being the fastest, but on being the hardest to kill. Take Stegosaurus, one of the most iconic Jurassic herbivores. While its small brain has often been mocked, its tail was a lethal weapon. At the end of it were 4 long, sharpened spikes, known as the thagomizer. These weren't just for show. One Allosaurus fossil has puncture wounds in its tail vertebrae that match the spacing of Stegosaurus spikes almost perfectly. A single swing could shatter bones or pierce vital organs. Predators that underestimated a Stegosaur's defenses often paid dearly. Then there were the giants, sauropods like Diplodocus and Apatosaurus. While slow, these dinosaurs had whip-like tails stretching over 40 feet. Some paleontologists believe these tails could be swung with enough speed to break the sound barrier, delivering bone-shattering blows. Combined with their sheer size and herd behavior, even these passive grazers posed real threats. Camarasaurus, a stockier sauropod, lacked the whip tail but made up for it with brute mass and strong limbs. A well-placed kick or tail swipe could maim a charging predator. And when these herbivores moved in herds, their strength multiplied. Safety wasn't just in size, it was in numbers. predators had to adapt. Allosaurus evolved strategies that focused on targeting vulnerable individuals, young, sick, or separated from the group. Its slashing bites may have been used to weaken prey slowly, avoiding prolonged confrontations. Torvosaurus, by contrast, may have relied on its sheer strength to attempt frontal assaults, but even it had to choose its targets wisely. Ceratosaurus, ever the opportunist, likely avoided healthy adults entirely, preferring to pick off stragglers or scavenge kills made by others. This dynamic balance between offense and defense created an evolutionary feedback loop. As predators grew smarter and deadlier, prey animals became tougher, more aware, and more defensive. Every kill was a risk. Every hunt could end in injury or death. Death pits and fossil battlefields. Evidence of violent encounters with the. Imagine stumbling into a prehistoric crime scene. Bones scattered, teeth embedded in vertebrae, and entire skeletons jumbled together in eerie proximity. That's exactly what paleontologists encounter at sites like the Cleveland Lloyd Dinosaur Quarry and the Mygat Moore Quarry. Fossil, rich graveyards that preserve not just life, but the violence of death. The Cleveland Lloyd Quarry in Utah is infamous for its unusual fossil concentration. Over 70% of the dinosaur remains found here belong to Allosaurus. This overwhelming dominance raises serious questions. Why are so many top predators buried in one place? One theory is that this site was a predator trap, perhaps a drying waterhole where herbivores became mired in mud. As carnivores arrived to scavenge, they too became trapped, creating a self-reinforcing death spiral over time. Another possibility is far grimmer cannibalism. Many Allosaurus bones show tooth marks from their own kind, deep grooves and punctures that indicate not just feeding, but fighting. Whether from post-mortem scavenging or aggressive disputes turned fatal, it's clear that Allosaurus wasn't above turning on its own kind in times of desperation. At Colorado's Mygat Moore Quarry, the evidence is just as brutal. Bones of both Allosaurus and Ceratosaurus have been found bearing healed injuries, suggesting survivors of violent clashes, possibly interspecies conflict. Some fossils even contain broken teeth from predators embedded in the bone, fossilized mid-bite, like a prehistoric frozen frame of attack. These fossil death pits tell us that predator behavior was far more complex and risky than simple one-on-one hunts. Kill sites likely drew in multiple carnivores. Feeding turned into fighting. Fights turned into fatalities. And all of it was preserved in layers of silt, ash, and time. Paleontologists read these scenes like forensic investigators. Tooth spacing, bite angles, healing patterns, and bone placement help reconstruct everything from the species involved to the probable cause of death. What emerges isn't guesswork. It's a grim, data-driven picture of the violence that ruled the Jurassic landscape, weathering the storm climate as a strategic force. In the Jurassic, claws and teeth weren't the only forces shaping life. Nature itself, through drought, flood, wildfire, and shifting climate, was an active player in the game of survival. For predators and prey alike, every strategy had to account not just for enemies, but for an unforgiving environment. The late Jurassic period was a time of dramatic environmental fluctuation. North America was located closer to the equator, and the land was part of a massive supercontinent known as Laurasia. Seasonal droughts were common, so were sudden, devastating floods. The Morrison Formation, home to many of our apex predators, was a semi-arid region dotted with rivers, lakes, and floodplains. These dynamic conditions shaped where and how predators hunted. During dry seasons, water sources would shrink. Herbivores, desperate for hydration, would cluster at the few remaining watering holes, creating natural ambush points. Fossilized trackways near ancient riverbeds show clusters of predator and prey footprints frozen in time. It's likely that Allosaurus and Torvosaurus regularly patrolled these choke points, waiting to strike when the odds tipped in their favor. But nature could turn on predators too. Flash floods could wash away kills' nests, and even entire animals. Some fossil quarries preserved multiple species jumbled together, evidence of sudden, water-driven burial events. These weren't random deaths. They were mass disasters, claiming predator and prey alike. Volcanic activity also played a role. Layers of ash within the Morrison Formation hint at ancient eruptions that blackened the skies, buried food sources, and disrupted migration patterns. Wildfires likely swept across dry plains during droughts, forcing animals to flee or adapt. These environmental stressors pushed predators to be mobile, flexible, and opportunistic. A successful hunter had to be more than strong or fast. It had to know the land. It had to adapt when a favorite hunting ground turned into a mud pit, or a riverbed dried to dust. In this way, nature was the ultimate strategist, rewarding those who adapted and eliminating those who didn't. And in the end, it was nature more than any rival that brought the Jurassic apex predators to their knees. Climate extinction, the fall of the Jurassic warriors. Ours for tens of millions of years. Apex predators like Allosaurus, Torvosaurus, and Ceratosaurus ruled the ecosystems of the Jurassic. They hunted, fought, and adapted to nearly every challenge. But eventually, their time ran out, not in a sudden catastrophe, but in a long, steady fade into extinction. As the Jurassic gave way to the early Cretaceous, the planet underwent massive geological and environmental changes. Sea levels rose, forests receded. The warm, semi-arid habitats of the Morrison Formation gave way to more fragmented ecosystems. Prey species evolved, migrated, or vanished, and new predators began to emerge. Among the rising threats were coelurosaurs, smaller, faster, and more neurologically advanced theropods. These included the ancestors of tyrannosaurs and raptors. With lighter builds, better balance, and likely sharper senses, these newcomers could outmaneuver the more traditionally built Jurassic carnivores. Allosaurus and its kin were powerful, but they were also specialized. Their large skulls, heavy frames, and slower reproductive cycles may have made them less adaptable in a rapidly changing world. As the climate shifted and competition intensified, their ecological niche began to shrink. It wasn't one killer blow, it was death by 1,000 cuts, a reduction in prey, a rise in smaller, faster predators, a world that no longer rewarded brute force alone. Some species, like Allosaurus, may have lingered into the early Cretaceous in isolated regions, but their dominance was gone. The age of slashing jaws and thagomizer wounds gave way to an era of feathers, speed, and new hunting styles. Yet their legacy remains, in the rocks, the bones, and our imaginations. Because Allosaurus wasn't just a dinosaur, it was a battlefield commander. Torvosaurus wasn't just muscle, it was siege warfare incarnate. Ceratosaurus was a ghost with a knife. They didn't just hunt, they strategized. They remind us that evolution isn't a ladder, it's a war zone. And in that war, victory belongs not just to the strong, but to the smart. Thank you for joining us on this journey back to the Jurassic, where strategy was survival, and every roar had a reason. If you enjoyed this deep dive into prehistoric combat, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Tell us in the comments which predator do you think had the deadliest strategy, and what creature should we cover next. Until next time, stay curious, stay fierce, and remember, in the Jurassic, every breath was earned.